Good evening, everybody. Sorry, I'm laughing here because I'm enjoying listening to the Superman theme being played by the Arlotro band here. Thanks for the pre-show entertainment there. That was pretty cool. All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Sorry, yeah, that's what's a couple of you had heard me chuckling there before I hit my other button there. Was I sniggering at you guys in the chat? No, I saw what you guys were doing on the chat, and it was kind of amusing too. But see, I was just amused all around. Everyone was amusing here before class began. Welcome back to episode number 120 of Exploring the Lord of the Rings, in which we will finish. This is happening. We are going to finish the Earendil was a Mariner poem tonight. That's certainly occurring. And that's absolutely happening. So we're going to do that. It's okay. All right, let me clarify. At least we're going to finish the version of the poem that's in the book, right? And then I'm going to do, probably next week, I'm going to do a little lecture when we go through the older versions of the poem, because I really want to draw your attention to sort of how that process worked, because it's awesome. And I love seeing the evolution, not only of this poem. There are several versions of things that we can see, like several different poems that Tolkien wrote, where Christopher has given us older versions and things so that we can see how the poem grows over time. And it's always really interesting to see. One, for instance, of those that's most interesting is the one that's called Cortirion Among the Trees, which we can see him writing way back in like 1916. So he was like super young when he wrote this. And then he wrote two versions of it back then. And then he revised it again, like 50 years later, when he was preparing, in the mid-60s, 1964, I think, when he was preparing the Adventures of Tom Bombadil poetry collection near the end of his life. So looking at, the way in which that poem changes over the course of the years, really fascinating. But this is way more than that, because not only do we get to see the way that the poem itself evolves, we can see how the entire frame of the ideas behind it are changing. And the question, when you just read the original poem, the Errantry poem, and then you look back at the Earendil poem that Bilbo has recited in Rivendell, and you're like, dude, how on earth does that happen? How do you get from one to the other? Anyway, it's really cool. It's really fun to see. Cool. Hey, I'm actually, sorry, I'm very interested to hear that a couple of you are having trouble with the Twitch stream. I'm interested to hear that because that happened to me earlier on today too. When my son was doing his stream this afternoon, it looked for all the world like it had just kicked out and died. But then apparently it was okay and was working for most people. I have no idea what's up with that. I cannot explain the way that Twitch appears to be behaving here, but all I can say is it did seem to be fine. And I'm not really sure. So Kona, I would just say, keep it up. Just keep it up. It'll get there somehow or other. Again, not at all sure what the problem is there. But anyway, welcome back. So I was at Middlemoot this past weekend. I just returned from Iowa yesterday, and I had a wonderful time, as always. Got to meet several of you there. Of course, was hanging out with Mad Violinist and his family. In fact, it was really awesome. His son, Zach, is super cool. His wife is cool too, and he's also all right. But his son, Zach, was really, really cool. I'm going to post a video later on of... I was trying to broadcast this on Twitch, but the internet was completely failing. It was terrible Wi-Fi and interrupted cell service. So I wasn't able to stream it live from Twitch as I had hoped to do. But we took a video, which I'm going to post to YouTube at the least, of a Hobbit pub game, a Hobbit story-based pub game that we were playing after Middlemoot, and it was really cool. And So Mad Violinist's son Zach like popped in and he was like, "Can I play?" And it was really really neat. Yeah, Rowan of Gondor was there, and there were several. I was trying to think of who else is here, who was there. I'm trying to like connect my brain to real names and screen names, which I often forget which one of you belong to which when I meet you in person at Moots. Rowan and I were talking about that actually on Saturday. So anyway, yeah, so great to see the folks who were there. Had a really good time. Looking forward to future opportunities soon to catch up with more of you at future moots. The next one's coming up. So we had been going to do Magnolia Moot, but we've postponed that. We pushed that ahead to the spring instead, which I think is going to be much better. So we will have, we're going to have Magnolia Moot in April. Mid-April is what we're thinking of now, which means that now the next moot coming up is Bay Moot, which we're looking at the weekend before Thanksgiving. So we'll have confirmation in the registration for up for that very soon. But that's definitely that's the next one that's coming up, and then we've got a bunch coming up this coming spring, starting February, March, and April. We're going to have at least 4 in those 3 months. So, and yes, D-May, so word on the European moot. The word on the European moot this year is we're not, that one we're moving to. Some of these are changing seasons. It happens sometimes. So like Magnolia moot is moving from fall to spring. Europe moot, we're going to move from spring to fall, actually. And the current word is Wales in September. Yeah, September. So D-May, like Labor Day, American Labor Day, is right around the time that we're looking at for basically Dragon Moot in Wales. So that's the plan, and maybe some extra fun like tours and trips that could be adjacent to the moot as well. So yeah, I'm really excited. Earendil, I've not been to Wales in several years now. Goodness, 9 years, I think, since I've been to Wales. Well, I visited with my family in 2012. So it was only 7 years. But still, we only visited for like 1 day. Anyhow, yeah, it's, yes, JJ, the plan, I believe, is it for actually to be Labor Day weekend. Yeah, I think that's the plan. Anyway, like I said, it's not 100% confirmed yet. We need to make sure that because we have to have a definite agreement with the venue before I can totally officially announce the date, but that is definitely the plan. Yeah. So absolutely. Let's see what else. And then of course there are still other moots in the offing. We definitely have Tex Moot, beginning of February 8th, I think. We have LA Moot later in February, in our really cool, fun venue for that this year. We have Sunshine Moot again in Orlando in March, and we have Magnolia Moot in April. So great spring moot schedule coming up here. Anyway, so really fun times. Again, if you haven't been to a regional moot, I hope that you will soon be able to. These are of course really low-key events in like every sense, right? Low-key in the sense of it's very inexpensive, right? They're like $30-$40 for the whole day, and that usually includes lunch. And they're a sort of small group of people. It's like, several people were talking about this at Middle Moot. It's like you find your tribe, right? Spending a day in the company of people who like share your enthusiasms, right, and whom you can talk to, about all this stuff. Was just joking with Becky, the young woman who came to Middlemoot for the first time this year, and she was wearing this really cool shirt that said, like, "I survived the Feanorian family reunion," and she was, sort of saying about how, like, she'd only ever, like, there was only ever like 2 people who had ever gotten her shirt, and she was like, all day everybody was coming up and complimenting me on my shirt. Yeah, and we all agreed she had absolutely the coolest shirt there. But anyway, it was it's just that kind of thing, right? We're just sort of surrounded by people who get the things that you like and who like the things that you get. So, hey, Kelly, there you go. Did I say? Oh, sorry, I said the wrong name. There you go. Hey, okay, excellent. See, look at that. I'm connecting more screen names. But yeah, anyway, that was definitely the short of the whole day. Anyway, okay, so I hope that you guys will definitely see if you can get to a regional moot that's near you. And if there's not one near you now, I'm hoping that there will be soon as we continue to expand that program. And if you're interested in helping to organize a moot near you, let us know. Send us an email and we will be in touch and see what we can do. That's how most of these got started, after all. Most of the ones that we currently have. Yeah. And Dime, Alaska, right? We're still looking forward to, maybe someday we will put together, what was that name Matthias was suggesting? Remote? Yes. Remote. And who knows, Dime, the Helcaraxa moot, there it is, right? Why not? I think it's, a moot in Alaska, convenient to so many people and bears and others who might attend, right? It would be fun. And actually, Tony, Colorado, I was talking about a Denver moot with Rowan of Gondor, I believe, who's also in Colorado. So, hey, maybe the mountain moot can still happen there. But anyhow, okay. So that's what's going on. Don't forget also this coming weekend, the 19th of, what's the month now? October 19th is our finale event for the fall fundraising campaign this year. So I'm looking forward to that. It's always a fun event, the webathon that we've done every year. So there will be a bunch of different events. It's going to be starting at noon Eastern time. So I hope that you'll be able to join us for that as we have the culmination of our fundraising campaign. There will be trivia contests. There will be sort of different programmings and shows. There will be maybe I'll do some more Lotro marathon. I'm still kind of up in the air about that, but that kind of depends in part upon other external scheduling things that I'm trying to figure out. But anyway, it's going to be fun. So I hope that you will join me for that. We could do reenactments involving the Misty Mountains in Colorado. Yeah, Brandon, let's go to Colorado and see if we can reenact the sliding down the hill from The Hobbit. Right? Let's see if we can do that. That would be fun. And we'd have to, I think, beef up our insurance a bit before we tried to reenact that one. But, oh, by the way, that reminds me. So our reenactment of the seating arrangements had to be postponed. We didn't end up getting to do the reenactment of the seating arrangements. We couldn't get, the physical stuff together. And the best opportunity we had was at the restaurant where we were eating afterwards. But, they were like benches. It was really hard. So and not to mention, it was, super, super loud there. So we didn't end up getting to do our reenactment there. So we've postponed that, and we're going to look for another occasion, maybe Baymoot, we'll see. Yeah, Brandon, I suppose we could try to reenact the 15 birds and 5 fir trees scene, but I'm not sure. I think our insurance would have to be very greatly increased for that one. Yeah. Reenact hauling Bomber up on ropes. Well, yeah, there are all kinds of Hobbit reenactments that we could do. All of these very, very active and perilous sounding reenactments from The Hobbit. Yeah. No, all kinds of interesting and mostly inappropriate options. I think that's good. Okay. Anyway, let us get back to the text here. So there we go. All right. Okay. Excellent. Okay, so tonight we are going to finish the poem, as I said. So let us go through, as we've been doing before. I'll start reading through from the beginning, and then I'll stop when we get to where I'll try to remember the correct place to stop tonight, as we have the last two stanzas to do tonight. Earendil was a mariner that tarried in Arvernian. He built a boat of timber felled in Nimbrathil to journey in. Her sails he wove of silver fair, of silver were her lanterns made. Her prow he fashioned like a swan, and light upon her banners laid. In panoply of ancient kings, in chained rings he armoured him. His shining shield was scored with runes to ward all wounds and harm from him. His bow was made of dragon horn, his arrow shorn of ebony. Of silver was his habergeon, his scabbard of chalcedony. His sword of steel was valiant, of adamant his helmet tall, as an eagle plume upon his crest, upon his breast an emerald. Beneath the moon and under star he wandered far from northern strands, bewildered on enchanted ways beyond the days of mortal lands. From gnashing of the narrow ice where shadow lies on frozen hills, from nether heats and burning waste he turned in haste, and roving still on starless waters far astray, at last he came to night of naught, and passed, and never sight he saw of shining shore nor light he sought. The winds of wrath came driving him, and blindly in the foam he fled, from west to east and errandless, unheralded he homeward sped. There flying Elwing came to him, and flame was in the darkness lit, more bright than light of diamond the fire upon her carcanet. The Silmaril she bound on him, and crowned him with the living light, and dauntless then with burning brow he turned his prow, and in the night from other world beyond the sea there strong and free a storm arose, a wind of power in Tarmanel, by paths that seldom mortal goes. His boat it bore with biting breath as might of death across the grey and long forsaken seas distressed. From east to west he passed away. Through Evernight he back was borne on black and roaring waves that ran o'er leagues unlit and foundered shores that drowned before the days began, until he heard on strands of pearl where ends the world the music long, where ever foaming billows roll the yellow gold and jewels wan. He saw the mountains silent rise where twilight lies upon the knees of Valinor, and Eldamar beheld afar beyond the seas. A wanderer escaped from night, to haven white he came at last, to Elvenhome the green and fair, where keen the air, where pale as glass, beneath the hill of Ilmarin, a glimmer in a valley sheer, the lamplit towers of Tirion are mirrored on the Shadowmere. He tarried there from errantry, and melodies they taught to him, and sages old him marvels told, and harps of gold they brought to him. They clothed him then in elven white, and 7 lights before him sent, as through the Calachirian to hidden land forlorn he went. He came unto the timeless halls, where shining fall the countless years, and endless reigns the elder king in Ilmarin on mountain sheer. And words unheard were spoken then, of folk of men and elven kin, beyond the world where visions showed forbid to those that dwell therein. A ship then new they built for him, of mithril and of elven glass, with shining prow, no shaven oar nor sail she bore on silver mast. The Silmaril as lantern light and banner bright with living flame, to gleam thereon by Elbereth herself was set, who thither came, and wings immortal made for him, and laid on him undying doom, to sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon. Okay, ready? From Ever-even's lofty hills where softly silver fountains fall, his wings him bore, a wandering light, beyond the mighty mountain wall. From world's end then he turned away, and yearned again to find afar his home through shadows journeying, and burning as an island star, on high above the mists he came, a distant flame before the sun, a wonder ere the waking dawn, where grey the Norland waters run. Okay, so the first thing I notice, just based on my breath, is that this is, again, a very long sentence, right? We have two sentences in this stanza. The first quatrain is one sentence, right? And the second two quatrains, the next 8 lines, are one other sentence. Right. Now, we'll remember that the last time, in last week's class, when we were looking at stanza 6 and 7, we were noticing a lot of the passive voice, right? How Earendil's big moment, big heroic moment, everything he actually does was de-emphasized. Right, through the use of the passive voice, there was no "and Earendil came." Right, we didn't get any moment like that with Earendil, which you'd think was good. We don't even know what his errand was. We're never told what his errand was. But instead, right, we were beginning to see that the primary emphasis of the poem is not on what Earendil does, but on what happens to Earendil. Right, and the way in which the doer of the action, not just that Earendil's actions were downplayed, but that even the actions done to him were very often, with the one exception of Elbereth setting the Silmaril herself upon the presumably the mast. Right, I think we agreed on that. Anyway, that apart from Elbereth, we weren't even told who was doing it. Right, so that the general sense that we were gleaning from those last two stanzas was that, again, it's primarily about what happens to Earendil, but it's not about complaining that somebody did it to him, right? It's just about what happened to Earendil. Now, Luke, yes, the mast and not the prow, I think it could be the prow. I still think the thing that makes me think that the mast makes most sense is the business about the banner, right? That it's the Silmaril as banner bright, which means probably the top of the mast. Yeah. Valori says that it's a very hobbity point of view of ancient history. Heroic things were done by heroes long ago. Again, except not even that much is quite stated. Right? I mean, it's not only that we're told that a great heroic deed was done and, kind of de-emphasizing that it was Earendil who did it. Again, it doesn't even say what exactly he did. I mean, the closest we got as far as his actual errand was concerned was, "And words unheard were spoken then of folk of men and elven kin." Yeah, I mean, and that I would only guess that was his errand, that was his great deed, because I know what it is. Right, I am importing from the Silmarillion knowledge of what Earendil actually accomplished, right? Which was delivering the plea for help from elves and men, and that's the only thing that leads me to suspect that those two lines contains the actual errand, right? If I didn't know that, I wouldn't have any suspicion. I mean, we don't even know who is speaking the words unheard to whom. There is it Earendil? Is it to him? Especially since in the last two lines there, with the visions showed forbid to those that dwell therein, it seems not to be, right? That there Earendil certainly seems to be the one receiving the vision. So is he also therefore receiving the words unheard in the previous two lines? That seems likely in context. So is that even talking about it? I don't even know. Anyway, okay. So back to stanza 8. And also remember where we just were. Right, we just finished giving him his new ship. Right? And laid on him undying doom to sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon, was where we just finished. Now, of course, we know, as we discussed, that doom isn't a bad thing necessarily, right? Just because an undying doom is laid upon him doesn't mean that something terrible has happened, right? It might not have been a terrible thing that happened. You know, the doom is undying doom. Yeah, as Kurtzimus says, that could translate to immortality is laid upon him, right? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a good thing, right? Especially since the word immortal, Kurtzimus, is used in the previous line, right? Wings immortal made for him and laid on him undying doom. Now, the way that it goes, though, undying doom to sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon. So, if he's being enabled to sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon, that's kind of cool, right? I mean, more than a little bit awesome. He's able to sail in the sky. He's been, given a flying ship. That's pretty cool. The word doom, though, if we were to stop at that line, like the word doom is kind of a pivotal word there, right? And I don't just mean that as a vague kind of, word meaning it's a big deal. I mean, like, it literally sort of pivots there, right? Think about it if we stopped there, right? If you just had, and wings immortal made for him, to gleam thereon by Elbereth herself was set, who thither came, and wings immortal made for him, and laid on him undying doom. Right, Kurtzimus, that kind of sounds just like you were saying, right? Hey, and he's made immortal, right? Double bonus. That's really sweet. But if we then move on, laid on him undying doom to sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon. It's, again, the ability to fly up into the sky where mortals can't go sounds like a good thing. But when you have undying doom laid on you to do something, right? The infinitive verb that comes after means this is his doom, right? This is the thing he's been doomed to do, fated, destined to do. To sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon. Now, again, just to say his doom is to sail the shoreless skies, that just means it's his destiny to sail up there, right? But when it's an undying doom, we begin to see that he's not coming back, right? Now he takes off. From Ereven's lofty hills where softly silver fountains fall, his wings him bore, a wandering light, beyond the mighty mountain wall. Yeah, Tony says it's also him being constrained from doing other things. Probably so. From Ereven. Now, Ereven, why is it Ereven, or at least what should we be remembering when he talks about Ereven? He's in the West, a place of perpetual twilight. Yeah. Remember, there's another place we should be remembering earlier in the poem. We're scrolling back. There it is. Evernight. Through Evernight he back was borne on black and roaring waves that ran, o'er leagues unlit and foundered shores that drowned before the days began, right? So he was in Evernight before, and now he's in Ereven, right? So he's gone westward through the night, right? And come to, not the morning, which so often follows the night, right? But he's gone to the even. In fact, he's not only gone to an evening after a night, he is in ever even, right? The place where it's always evening, the place where it's always twilight. So there's this sense there of, and we talked about this a little bit, looking at the time. Remember all that time language that we got, especially back in stanza 6, about the Elder King. Remember that? We got that 3 lines in a row there. He came unto the timeless halls where shining fall the countless years and endless reigns the Elder King. We had that sense of him kind of going outside of time, right? Yeah, Fourth Dauntless says, would this mean that there should be an ever day even farther west? Well, funny that you mentioned that, Fourth Dauntless. Keep that in mind. No, we're not going to see that in this poem, but keep that in mind. We'll talk about that again. I think that we'll see that next time, actually. 'Cause yeah, there is ever noon, I think, not ever day, but ever noon, as I recall. Anyway, not here in this poem, but in one of the earlier versions of the poem. But again, in passing through the Calicurian to hidden land forlorn, right? He leaves time behind, right? In a sense, he's now in timeless halls, watching, apparently, right, or being told at least, that the countless years fall shining there, and endless reigns the Elder King. So again, lots of time imagery, timeless imagery, and so his time has not just gone backwards; he's gone out of the regular circuit as he goes from ever night, not only to evening, but to ever even. Okay. Let's see. Okay, Tony. Tony has a question about the Elder King. Is Manwë just the first king or high king over all kings? As in, does he have authority over other kings? Yes. Yes. Both. Yes. Anyway, okay. From ever even's lofty hills where softly silver fountains fall. And who was it? Was Fourth Dauntless? Was it you who was talking about the... Yes, it was. The return of the alliteration, right? Sudden burst of alliteration there, right? From ever even's lofty hills where softly silver fountains fall, right? 4 words in a row, softly silver fountains fall. And then we get wings him bore a wandering light behind the mighty mountain wall. We get a real... a lot of alliteration in that quatrain, right? That quatrain really pulled together within individual lines, though mountain wall does recall, of course, the W's from the previous line there pretty clearly. It's interesting that we get the L's in wall and fall, of course. Fountains fall and mountain wall. There's the end rhymes on lines 2 and 4. But of course, hills in line 1 doesn't rhyme, is not supposed to rhyme with fountains fall and mountain wall. But again, we get the double L there at the end of the line there as well. So a lot of consonants with an NCE happening here. Okay, and lofty hills where softly silver fountains fall, his wings him bore a wandering light beyond the mighty mountain wall. Beyond the mighty mountain wall means, I guess, the pilori, right? The barrier of mountains. So in other words, what he's saying here is that he is taking off, right, and flying over Valinor, right? So he's still beyond the mighty mountain wall. He's still to the west, right? Mad Violinist, let's make sure we get the syntax right. What's the subject of the sentence here? From ever even's lofty hills, prepositional phrase, where softly silver fountains fall, subordinate clause, his wings him bore. Yeah, there it is. His wings him bore. That's our subject and verb. A wandering light beyond the mighty mountain wall, which is basically in a positive, right? His wings him bore. Wait, whom did it bear? You know, him, a wandering light beyond the mighty mountain wall. Where were his wings bearing him? Right? His wings him bore. Okay. So we have him flying. He is characterized as a wandering light beyond the mighty mountain wall. We get the image of the lofty hills, well, the image even contained in Ever Even, followed by the lofty hills, and then the sound where softly silver fountains fall, which is both an oral and a visual image, right? A wandering light beyond the mighty mountain wall. From world's end, then, he turned away, and yearned again to find afar his home through shadows journeying, and burning as an island star on high above the mists he came, a distant flame before the sun, a wonder ere the waking dawn where grey the Norland waters run. Yes, Earendilian, he is in his flying ship, and the light is the Silmaril. Yes, exactly. That's why he is a wandering light. Yes, again, Tony, you're right. Earendil's name is suppressed here, right? His wings him bore. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's active voice technically, but I agree. It's speaking very indirectly of him, right? Not only is he only a pronoun in this sentence, but it's like the flying is something that's happening to him, right? He's still sort of the object of the action, even though wings bore him. His wings bore him is an active verb. I agree. It still does suppress the primary subject, right? This is not, then Earendil flew a wandering light. Yeah, no, Tony, exactly. Yeah, I've been trying to suppress knowledge of the Silmarillion, usually, right? Occasionally we let it sneak through, but I've been trying to suppress that, here, trying to understand this from the context of Bilbo's poem. Now, Mad Violinist, that's an interesting question, right? The wings were made by Elbereth, right? It's true that he's not serving his own agenda, but the question, at least the question to me is he driving the boat, right? Who's flying this thing, right? He's been given the wings and an undying doom has been laid upon him, but does he still have his hand on the tiller, right, of his ship? I wonder. I kind of suspect that maybe he does, because of the way that his light is wandering, and the second sentence, the last 8 lines, certainly does suggest that he has a hand on the tiller, right? I mean, from world's end, then he turned away. There we go. An active verb, a straightforward sentence. From world's end, then he turned away. He turned. When was the last time, here's a little point of trivia, when was the last time that either Earendil or a pronoun referring to Earendil was the subject of a sentence? Like, actual grammatically, the subject of a sentence, right? I mean, he is there, right? He turned away. When was the last time we saw him doing anything laid on him? Let's see. They built for him. No, it doesn't happen in that stanza. He tarried there from errantry. Good call, Fourth Dauntless. I think that's it. Because then they clothed him. To hidden land forlorn, he went. Okay, I guess you could say. Yeah. He went. Okay. He came unto the timeless halls. Okay, so we get a couple here. I mean, they're pretty, I don't know. What's the word I want here? Milk toast verbs, right? He tarried, he came, he went, right? I mean, yeah, like, look, syntactically speaking, that's subject and verb, but they are kind of lame verbs. That is, I mean, he's to hidden land forlorn he went. Like, okay, he tarried there, not a real strong action on his part. Right? Him going through the Calicurian is a big deal, right? And then he comes immediately after he went, right, unto the timeless halls. And from then on, it's all indirection, right? And all things happening to him and for him. Yeah. Anyway, stanza 8. So now, Flammifer, be careful here. You're talking about the morning star, right? What association do we have with the morning star, right? Do we have any reason to think that he's the morning star? I mean, I know we will eventually, right? But we have not now, right? Don't prejudge. Don't let other knowledge prejudge. I mean, in fact, we've even seen Bilbo taking some liberties with what would appear to be the known facts, right? So let's stick with what we have here in the poem. Yeah. Well, we're going to get there. We will be told that he's a wonder ere the waking dawn. Sure. Yeah. He's going to be seen before the dawn comes. But you know, that day, right? We haven't, I'm just saying, we don't know yet, right? We don't know yet. Spoilers. But because here, several of you are arguing that he's not driving the boat, but he is. I mean, it says right there, from world's end, then he turned away and yearned again to find afar his home through shadows journeying. So he turns away. We're told that he turns the ship away, and we're told why, right? It's in following his own desire that he turned away from the world's end, right? World's end meaning Valinor, right? Remember like that we got that image way back in like stanza 5. Yeah. Where ends the world, the music long, right? The shores of Valinor are the end of the world, right? So from world's end then, so he's been all behind the mighty mountain wall. He's been all over in Valinor, right? Wandering. Then from world's end, then he turned away. Why? And yearned again to find afar his home through shadows journeying. Okay? That's his desire. He wants to go back home. Through the shadows, because, you know, he's been the other way and he knows there's shadows between him and them. So he's yearning again to find his home. And burning as an island star on high above the mists he came. And so there he goes, right? There he goes, heading back, right? The way he wants to go after he's turned away. This poem very strongly suggests that he is driving the boat, right? I mean, that's what it says in this sentence. In fact, not only do we get he turned, but notice what else we get. We get a bunch of verbs. What are the verbs here? The main verbs, not subordinate clause verbs. Right? What are the main verbs? From world's end, then he turned away. So he turned away from world's end. Then. Those are all adverbs talking about his turning. And yearned again to find afar. Compound verb. He turned. He yearned. Yearned again to find afar his home through shadows journeying. Right? Journeying is not a main verb. Right? That's through shadows journeying. It's a phrase, right? Describing like how is he going to get it? It's another adverbial phrase. Right? He's going to find his home. How? Through shadows journeying. Right? Okay, so he turned away and yearned again. And burning as an island star, no, that's not a verb either, right? First of all, notice the lack of parallelism. He turned and he yearned, two past tense verbs. Those are parallel. Burning, it's not parallel, so either Tolkien screwed it up or that's not a main verb. Spoiler, it's not a main verb. Burning as an island star is another adverb. It's another adverbial phrase, right? Another participial phrase. Burning as an island star on high above the mists he came. He came, right? That's our main verb again. On high above the mists he came, a distant flame before the sun. A wonder ere the waking dawn, where gray the Norland waters run. Okay, so we get the three verbs about him, right? Okay. You guys are not following along with me here. You guys keep wanting to talk about Venus, and you keep wanting to talk about what evidence do you have that he's not driving the boat? It says that he is. It says that he is. Right? Follow what the poem says. Keep in mind, I know what's going on, but the point is not what we know to be going on. The point is what Bilbo is emphasizing in the poem. We know what brought him to Valinor. We know the errand that he was supposed to do. We know what he accomplished and how awesomely heroic he was, but the poem doesn't say it. And if we want to understand what the poem is emphasizing, we've got to forget the other stuff and pay attention to what it says, right? Yes, like we have, what evidence is there that somebody else other than him is driving the boat? We're told here, he turned away. He's called a wandering light. We're told he turns away, which is associated with him yearning again to find afar. That's why he's turned away from World's End. And then high above the mists he came, right? This is what he's doing. And we're even told why he wants to do it, right? Again, I don't see anything in this stanza which implies, or even, I would almost go so far as to say, which even permits us, or justifies us, perhaps a better way of saying it, in believing that he's not steering. All we were told, again, let's go back to the doom stanza, right? A ship then new they built for him, of mithril and of elven glass, with shining prow. No shaven oar nor sail she bore on silver mast. The Silmaril as lantern light, and banner bright with living flame, to gleam thereon by Elbereth herself was set, who thither came and wings immortal made for him. So she makes wings, right? And laid on him undying doom, to sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon. No, Seaforth Dauntless, again, look more carefully here. His undying doom is to sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon. Yes, we are given the parameters of where he can sail, but his undying doom is to sail. That's an active verb. That's a thing he's supposed to do. That's not something happening to him. The doom is happening to him, right? But the doom is not for him to suffer that. He's to sail the shoreless skies. That's what you do. Sail. That's the verb used when you're steering a boat, right? And come behind the sun and light of moon. So that's what his fate, his destiny is, to sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon. Here's one of the reasons that I'm leaning on this, because I think that several of you are going a step too far here. For a second, take out the word undying, right? If it just said to sail the shore, and laid on him a doom to sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon, that doesn't imply restraint of any kind, right? Like, an explorer's destiny is to find this foreign shore, right? His destiny, his doom, is to sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon. He is being empowered to do that, right? She is just, by her own hand, right? By Elbereth herself, she has set the Silmaril on his ship, and she has made for him wings immortal. She has given him the power to fly, and therefore laid on him the doom to sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon. That's what he's meant to do. That's his doom. However, it is an undying doom, and I absolutely agree that has an ominous ring, right? That word does, I think, imply that there's a catch here, right? There's another side to this equation. But I think if we don't hear it as another side of the equation, if we see this all as pointing in the same direction, like here's what he's constrained to do, right? He's like, the whole thing is like a prison sentence. It's not, right? He is given the doom of sailing the shoreless skies and coming behind the sun and light of moon like nobody's ever done before, right? I mean, he can fly to where even the birds can't fly, right? He's not just given the power of flight, right? I mean, this is amazing, right? But it's an undying doom, which means it never expires, right? Good news, probably, but also does suggest something else going on, right? And what do we immediately see? We immediately see, apparently, him doing what he wants to do, wandering. What's the first thing he does, right? He gets wings on his boat. And the first thing he does is fly around and explore Valinor, apparently. From Ever-Even's lofty hills, where softly silver fountains fall, his wings him bore, a wandering light beyond the mighty mountain wall. He's wandering around behind the mighty mountain wall. This is pretty cool, right? Tour of Valinor. Can't blame him. I'd probably do the same thing. Then he goes on, right? From world's end then he turned away and yearned again to find afar his home through shadows journeying. Okay, he wants to go home, right? He wants to find afar his home through shadows journeying. As I mean, his home is afar away. He knows this, right? It was a long trip over here. Pretty eventful too, right? And the night of naught, right? Evernight lies between them, right? So what does he do? But he's got a flying boat now, right? I mean, hey, like Evernight, no problem, right? He owns the Evernight now, right? Why does he have to fear from Evernight? He doesn't have to fear any... Remember the storm that blew him back and everything? Pfft, no problem. He's above the winds. Oh, man. Right? So, off we go, right? I want to go home. I'm going home. From world's end then he turned away and yearned again to find afar his home through shadows journeying, and burning as an island star on high above the mists he came, right? A distant flame before the sun, a wonder ere the waking dawn, where gray the Norland waters run. They see him, right? He gets his wish. Sort of. Notice the ironic phrasing of his desire. He yearned again to find afar his home through shadows journeying. Afar. Afar is the tricky word there, right? He wants to find his home, which is afar off, right? But that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is he's going to find his home afar. That is, he's going to find it from a great distance, right? He's going to see it from way, way far away. And they're going to see him. A wonder ere the waking dawn, where gray the Norland waters run. Now, think about that. Ere the waking dawn, what happened? What happened? Think about the time thing, right? Ever even? What just happened? You see? He's gone back. He's gone back. He passed through Evernight and came not to the morning, but to the evening, right? To Ever Even, in fact, to the timeless halls of the Elder King, right? Now he's going back, leaving the world's end behind, crossing over the mighty mountain wall, leaving the world's end behind, going through the shadows, back through Evernight, and he returns back through Evernight ere the waking dawn, right? He comes with the morning, before the morning. And before the sun, he is seen as a wonder, right? A distant flame before the sun, a wonder ere the waking dawn, where gray the Norland waters run. Do you see what else syntactically happens here? Notice who doesn't appear. Just as Earendil didn't appear in some parts earlier on, who doesn't appear here? Anybody? Right? Anybody? Who sees him? Why? What does it mean? We don't know. A distant flame before the sun, a wonder ere the waking dawn, where gray the Norland waters run. In that place, you know, the place where the Norland waters run gray, he was a wonder ere the waking dawn. Somebody must have seen him, right? I mean, I presume it's not the gray waters themselves which are wondering, right, to see him. But it seems to be some kind of miraculous sign in the sky. But notice, even that, what I just said, miraculous sign, that goes beyond what the poem emphasizes, right? We get almost nothing about the people who are looking up to see it, which is interesting, right? Interesting because, once again, this is Bilbo burying the lead, right? Once again, like, so what did Earendil accomplish? Because, I mean, if you have the cheek to make verses about Earendil in the House of Elrond, what are you going to make sure to do? Probably, you'd think. Oh, I don't know, maybe make sure that you, like, do justice to the awesomeness of what he accomplished, maybe, right? That might be prudent. But he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. He didn't do it before. We don't even know what the errand was. What did Earendil do? Don't know. Here, what is the reaction to him? What are the after effects of his doing that thing that he went over there to do? We don't know. We don't know. Yeah. Yeah, Matt, I suppose it could be the talking foxes, of course, who were wondering. We don't necessarily know that people saw it. You're absolutely right. The Norland, that's a very vague term, Iwendilian, a deliberately vague term. It just means the Northlands. Literally, I mean, it's like a contraction, essentially, of the Northlands. It could scarcely be vaguer, right? You know, in the northern part of the Great Lands, right? So the vaguely Beleriandic region is where wonder was happening, right? At this point. Why? Why be vague? Or rather, again, the why question is almost always a bad question. What is the effect of that vagueness? To me, the function of that vagueness, the effect of that vagueness, is to emphasize the distance between Earendil and the people, right? He yearns again to find afar his home through shadows journeying, and what he does is find it afar. What can he see from where he is? The continent. That's all he can see, is the continent. He can't see the people. He can't see people, like, pointing up and seeing, right? He probably guesses that they're experiencing wonder, right? That he's probably visible from there, and that they're going to notice that. But yeah, it's not very clear, right? Because he can't see them. He's only seeing them from afar. He can see his home, right? Kind of like you can see from an airplane at 37,000 feet, or better, how you could see it from the International Space Station, right? You can see your home, right? The planet, the continent. But he can't see anything else. He's cut off from his people, from his home, by this distance. And I think that the distance, that the vagueness of that last stanza is really powerful in that way. A distant flame before the sun. Notice how the distance is emphasized there. Notice all those distant words. From afar onwards. Burning as an island star, on high above the mists he came, a distant flame before the sun, a wonder ere the waking dawn, where grey the Norland waters run. High above, distant flame, island star, an island star. And what does that mean? Island, in the sense of, well, if he's the only star you can see in the sky, right, as the sun that's about to rise has already covered up most of the stars, right? And so it looks like a star. It's a lonely island star, right? Because it's the only star that you can see around it. But of course, it's also a star which is like an island, right? He is isolated in that star. He's not gone home. He's just come above his home and is seeing it from a really, really far distance, right? No star is an island, except for this one, Kurtzimus, right? Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And again, Norland waters, right? All he can see is the Norlands, generally. Let's keep going. And over Middle-earth he passed, and heard at last the weeping sore of women and of elven maids in elder days and years of yore. But on him mighty doom was laid, till moon should fade, an orbed star to pass and tarry never more on hither shores where mortals are. For ever still a herald on an errand that should never rest, to bear his shining lamp afar, the flammifer of Westerness. So yes, JJ, the first thing we get is a connection to his home, of a sort. And over Middle-earth he passed, and heard at last the weeping sore of women and of elven maids in elder days, in years of yore. When he passes over Middle-earth, he hears the weeping sore of women and of elven maids. So he can hear them, right? Yes, Tony, I do assume that when he says women and of elven maids, that the distinction he's making is between human women and elven women, not between women who are married and women who are still virgins, which is, of course, one but possible way to read the distinction between women and maids. But I don't think that that's it. I think it's between mortal women and elven women there. So, yes, Mike, exactly. He does hear the lamentation of their women. So he is 1/3 of the way to Conan the Barbarian's paradise. Absolutely. Yes. And in the last battle, arguably, Mike, he gets the other two, right? In his fight with the winged dragons, he does get to crush his enemies and see them run before him. So there you go. He's got it all. Right. So yeah. Oh, he really does the barbaric trifecta there. Okay. But anyway, back to the point. Now, remember, what should we be associated with the hearing? This is not from within the poem, but it is from within the Fellowship of the Ring. Forget, again, don't think of the Silmarillion, though You might remember it from the Silmarillion too. What is interesting about the fact that he's hearing the people, and specifically what he's hearing from the people? What should that make us think of? What should we associate with this? Yes, Elbereth. Trifle. Absolutely. Fourth Dauntless, yes. Elbereth. We know that Elbereth can hear. We know this because of Gilder's song, right? The hymn to Elbereth that we've already heard. We know that she hears the people. We know that she heard Frodo, right, at Weathertop. And of course, remember, she is the one who is named, the only one who is named in this poem, right? So she personally sets the Silmaril and gives wings to him, right? And we see that he seems to have received something of her blessing, or to be given a modicum of her power as well, to hear the weeping sore of women and of elven maids, right? He hears their lamentations. Can't get that word out of my head now. In elder days, in years of yore. What do you make of that line? Isn't that one a little strange? I mean, we've been talking about, like, we've been in the moment there, right? I mean, that last sentence in stanza 8 here, that 8-line sentence there, it's all action, right? We get Earendil's doing stuff. He's doing 3 things. He turned away, he yearned again, he came high above the mists, right? This is an action sequence. And then it sounds like it's still an action sequence at the beginning of stanza 9. And over Middle-earth he passed. Ta-da! And heard at last, another compound verb. He passed over Middle-earth and heard at last the weeping sore of women and of elven maids. So what happened then? And then all of a sudden, in elder days, in years of yore. I mean, okay, yeah, we knew that, right? I mean, right? Didn't we? It's kind of been established from the beginning, but why are we bringing that up now? Why are we interrupting this action sequence to just like randomly say, P.S. This action sequence brought to you in the elder days. You know, the years of yore. It seems like an odd conclusion, doesn't it? Right. It's not just regular weeping, Fourth Dauntless. It's legendary weeping. Weeping of a legendary variety, right? I agree. Trifle, that's a great observation. In the last stanza, we had established the physical distance, and now we're getting a time distance as well. Yeah, and Tony, I agree. It emphasizes how long he's been doing this. Yeah, Crownless is wondering, are the elven maids still weeping? Right, exactly. Let me ask another question. Why does the next line begin with but? Okay. In order to answer that question, let us look at the syntax of the final sentence of the poem, which is the last 8 lines, right? The last 8 lines of the stanza. On him mighty doom was laid, till moon should fade, an orbed star to pass and tarry nevermore on hither shores where mortals are. Semicolon. Okay, hang on. Subject verb of that first independent clause. We've got a semicolon, so that means we've had an independent clause. And it gets tricky again because passive verb again. We go back into the passive voice. Doom was laid, mad violinist, that's exactly it. Doom was laid on him. What kind of doom? A mighty doom was laid on him. By whom? I don't know. It doesn't say, right? It quite specifically doesn't say who laid on him the mighty doom, right? Now, we might suspect, of course, that the mighty doom here is perhaps the same as the undying doom, which Elbereth definitively laid upon him, right? But that's probable. But again, in this sentence, she's not mentioned again. So yeah, I don't think it's like trying to hide it, but again, it doesn't say it. Once again, we have this same pattern of a passive voice verb with no doer of the action mentioned in that sentence, right? Okay, but anyway, on him mighty doom was laid. What is the mighty doom? Till moon should fade, an orbed star to pass, and tarry nevermore on hither shores where mortals are. So the doom, his doom is to pass an orb. It's a little bit complicated. To pass like as an orbed star, and tarry nevermore on hither shore. So he's not supposed to tarry nevermore on hither shores where mortals are. He can't stop on hither shores where mortals are. He can't go back. But more, we've got, first of all, let's settle the orbed star business. Yes, okay, good. Several viewers, right? So an orbed star to pass. He is a star within his orb. So yes, this means he is restricted to, he is an orbed star, which does mean he is a planet. Yes, he is in a planetary sphere. For him to be orbed, I used to think for years, like, when I was younger, when I first read this poem, I thought that an orbed star meant that he was round, right? Like he had been like made round in some way. Like I didn't get orbed. I had no idea what orbed meant. I'm like, or an orb is a ball, so he's been made into a ball. Is how I always understood those lines. Earendil, like Bomber, has grown spectacularly fat. Yeah, I guess Bomber is kind of orbed as well by the end. Oh boy. Yes, that is a most unflattering image. I have to admit, when I imagined him being made round into a star, I did not imagine him being plumped up to the point where his personal body swelled out there. I think I had always imagined myself, I had always pictured him like in a snow globe, It's like he was an orbed star, so like the little flying ship, like sealed into an orb of light, basically, is how I think I had always pictured it. But anyway, yeah. So, Mad Violinist, you are of course exactly correct. When I went to college and learned about the Ptolemaic solar system, the medieval worldview, that yes, that's clearly the orb in question, and the sense in which you are an orbed star, and that is, he travels within the sphere, his own celestial sphere, right? And to be to pass as an orbed star, like an orbed star to pass, right, means that to be orbed, therefore means to be restricted within that orb. He can't leave it, right? He can't leave it. But on him mighty doom was laid till moon should fade, an orbed star to pass, and tarry nevermore on hither shores where mortals are. He can't cross that distance that is between him and the Norland, right? His home and the people of his home. Why? For ever still an errand on, an errand that should never rest to bear his shining lamp afar, the flammifer of Westerness. Do we get another subject and verb? No. Forever still a herald on an errand that should never let rest, to bear his shining lamp afar, the flammifer of Westerness. Sorry, I'm trying to parse this. I'm like diagramming this sentence in my head and it's not going well. Forever still a herald on an errand that should never rest. Okay, so still a herald on an errand, modifying herald, or still, perhaps. He's still on an errand that should never rest, adjectival clause, describing errand, to bear his shining lamp afar, that describes the errand. Yeah. An errand to bear his shining lamp afar, the flammifer of Westerness, which is an appositive describing lamp. I think. I mean, it describes him. Yeah, so flammifer means bearer of the flame. Yes, the bearer of the flame. Here's one of the things that so yes, Lucifer is the same kind of word. I mean, so flammifer and Lucifer are parallel in the sense that the if-her ending means one who carries, and Lucifer means, luce is light in Latin, so you've got the bearer of the flame, the bearer of the light. The thurifer, right, is the dude who goes down, who processes down the aisle with the incense in the swinging orb, and he incenses the congregation, which is my favorite verb to use out of context. Anyway, yeah. So that's means the thurifer is the one who bears the incense, right? Which is what that means. And yes, you are Christopher, the one who bears Christ. Exactly. So yeah. Anyway, so that's what all of those things mean. So flammifer means bearer of the flame. Sorry, I'm still having problems with my diagramming. Maybe this is the next reenactment we need to do. Reenact the diagramming of this sentence. Okay. I have no idea what Jennifer means. It looks like the same thing, right? The if-her ending. Christopher I can make sense of. Jennifer, I'm not sure I can. Does anybody know what the Jen part means in Jennifer? Is it bearing the something or other? You'd think so. Looks like it. Bearer of genies. Quite possibly. Yeah, I think it's not from the same origin, I think. But it's kind of fun. Yeah, oh well. Jenny is a word for a donkey. You are so correct. The bearer of the donkey. Yeah, no, I like that. That's funny. I know. It's a Welsh name. I know. It comes from Guinevere. Yes. But it's funnier to think of Jennifer as the bearer of the donkey. But anyway, okay. let me get back to my grammar. But on him mighty doom was laid, till moon should fade and orbed star to pass, and tarry nevermore on hither shore where mortals are. For ever still a herald on an errand that should never rest, to bear his shining lamp afar, the flammifer of Westerness. Yeah, Matt, I agree with you that this seems, I mean, so the first thing to notice is that as is, it's not, in fact, an independent clause, which you'd think it would be, which it really should be following a semicolon. Now, in the first half of the 20th century, they were a lot looser with things like that. You will see things like, which modern English teachers would call comma splices, for instance. You can find those in Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, for instance. But I think if we yes, Westerness does refer to Numenor, Kurtzimus. That's Westerness that's a translation of the word Numenor. That is exactly what that is. But hang on, I'm not to words. I'm still on syntax. Okay. So if, as Matt suggested, we hear an implied he is forever still an errand, a herald on an errand that should never rest, to bear. And who was it who wanted a colon after rest? Because I totally agree with you. That'd be lovely. We were all distracted talking about Jennifer and got carried away. But anyway, I forget. Somebody was saying they wanted a colon after that, and I completely agree. Okay. Oh, was Earendilian? Okay. Thanks, Forthalis. Okay. Earendilian, you're correct. I would like that too. An errand that should never rest, to bear his shining phantom colon, to bear his shining lamp afar, the flammifer of Westerness. I want a colon after afar too. Oi. Oi. Sorry, I'm having all manner of problems here. Here's the reason I'm having all manner of problems. Syntactically, I know the flammifer of Westerness. Okay, here's the essential part of my doubt. The essential part of my doubt here lies in, what is the flammifer of Westerness? Is Earendil the flammifer of Westerness? Probably. Yes. To bear his shining lamp. I mean, the verb to bear is in the previous line. And if he's bearing his shining lamp, then that makes him, by definition, the flammifer, because he's bearing, that's a totally different thing. He's bearing the flame, the shining lamp. So the flame in question is the flame of the Silmaril, and he is bearing his shining lamp, which makes him the flammifer of Westerness. Yeah, the Silmaril is the flame, he is the flammifer, by definition. Because that's his errand. His errand, the errand that should never rest, that one, is to bear his shining lamp afar. Which is why he's known as the flammifer of Westerness. I'll come back to Westerness in a second. The flame imagery has been associated with him several times already, right? I mean, we just got that. A distant flame before the sun, burning as an island star. So he's a wandering light, sort of more neutrally first, but then he's burning, and then he's a distant flame, right? So associated with flame. Yeah, he's the lamp bearer, he's the flame bearer, he's the flammifer. Okay, he is the flammifer of Westerness. See, flammifer, now this is confusing, flammifer. This is maximally confusing because, of course, we have a person in Discord whose name is flammifer. So to refer to you by name while discussing this line is particularly challenging. But I have to correct you about your comment about your name because his ship is not referred to. Again, that's why I'm laboring over the syntax. I'm not just doing this because I'm like super persnickety, because I'm totally not. I am doing it because we need to follow what the poem tells us, right? And his ship is not referred to. His ship forms no part of the structure of this entire sentence, all the way back to the butt, right? On him mighty doom was laid till moon should fade, an orbed star to pass and tarry nevermore on hither shores where mortals are, forever still a herald, which is the job of a person on an errand like a person would do that should never rest, to bear his shining lamp afar, the flammifer of Westerness. His boat is ancient history. Yes, his boat is there. I'm not saying he's not in his boat, but again, that's not... that's nowhere emphasized in here. So we can't draw the conclusion to say that his ship is being referred to as the flammifer, because his ship isn't even being referred to, full stop, right, in this sentence. And again, this is why it's so important to focus on the words that are there, right, to focus on the the phrasing and to work out the syntax here. Okay. The emphasis in this final sentence is on the mighty doom that is laid on him, right? And all of the things which follow are essentially explaining what the doom is. On him mighty doom was laid, till moon should fade. So, for how long is this doom laid upon him? Until the moon shall fade. What is the doom? To pass as an orbed star. That's what the doom is. And also, to tarry nevermore on hither shores where mortals are. That's also part of the doom, right? Forever still a herald on, an errand that should never rest, to bear his shining lamp afar, the flammifer of Westerness. So, forever still a herald. So this last bit, it's not exactly continue, like, in the first half of the sentence there, it really is like stating the doom and then telling us about the doom. Till moon should fade, an orbed star to pass, and tarry nevermore in hither shore where mortals are. The next part, it's associated with the doom, but it's no longer modifying it grammatically, right? He is, or he has been doomed to be, forever still a herald on, an errand that should never rest, to bear his shining lamp afar. Okay. Yeah. His errand should never rest. Notice how much less grandiose that is than on him mighty doom was laid. On him mighty doom was laid. Sounds like a huge big deal, right? To have an errand that should never rest just kind of sounds like a bit of a nuisance, right? You see what I mean? There's a dissent in the diction here, right? In the level of the diction, you see? Forever still a herald on an errand that should never rest, to bear his shining lamp afar. That's his job. to bear the lamp. Yeah, errand is not that's not an elevated word. That's not a grandiose word. Fourth Dauntless is asking, is this a deliberate contrast to his previous errantry? Yeah, I mean, yes, the words are similar, right? But like, he tarried there from errantry means something different, right? This doesn't mean he'd been doing, he was in the middle of errands day, right? He'd been running a bunch of errands, but he paused for a little while, right? To learn some melodies, right? That's not what's being said in that line. Errantry, yes, the words are connected, but he tarried there from errantry is very different, right? There, he's being a knight errant. He is wandering about, accomplishing deeds, right? And doing quests, just like in Lotro, right? Then at the end, he's on an errand that should never rest. Yeah, sorry. Just wanted to go back to that stanza for a second. Okay. To bear his shining lamp afar. Why? Earendil. Interesting that you should mention. Rescuing maidens. Right? Let me go back to the question I was asking before. Why does this sentence start with the word but? Why does the sentence start with but? Look what directly comes before it. And over Middle-earth he passed, and heard at last the weeping sore of women and of elven maids in elder days, in years of yore. But on him mighty doom was laid. Yeah, Fourth Dauntless, I think that's exactly it. Exactly, good. Fourth Dauntless and Earendil and Tony and Bruni are all thinking the same thing. He can't rescue the maidens. He can't rescue the maidens. He heard at last the weeping sore of women and of elven maids. So what did he do about it? Nothing. But on him mighty doom was laid, till moon should fade and orbed star to pass, and tarry nevermore on hither shores where mortals are. He can hear the lamentations of the women and the elven maids, but he can't do anything about it. He can't come down and respond to them. He can't come down and rescue them. And so remember, that sentence starts with but, right? So everything in the final sentence of the poem, everything that follows is linked to what came before by the but, right? But on him mighty doom was laid. Think about how that sentence would be different if it started with, say, for, right? For on him mighty doom was laid, till moon should fade and orbed star to pass, and tarry nevermore on hither shores where mortals are, right? Sounds a little nicer, right? But when you start with but, the entire context of that is his, I was going to say helplessness. That's not quite right, at least a little unfair. But powerlessness, but he's restricted. He's constrained. That's exactly right. The but does make it tragic, Mike. Absolutely. But on him mighty doom was laid, till moon should fade, an orbed star to pass. An orbed star to pass. That's the mighty doom. He's going to pass as an orbed star. The orbed is the really important word there, right? Which talks about his constraint, right? His mighty doom is that he is constrained to his orb. And he can't leave that orb. He can't come any closer to the hither shores than his orb allows. Forever still a herald on an errand that should never rest. We didn't get to talk about herald. A couple of you wanted to talk about herald before when I was waving you off and saying we had to do syntax before words, but let's talk about that one now. Herald. What does that mean? In what sense is he a herald? Herald and errand do seem to be connected choices, for thoughtless, of course, heavily emphasized by the fact that they are part of that internal rhyming pair, right? Flammifer, I still disagree with you about driving his ship. No evidence. He's doomed to pass as an orbited star, right? Well, the emphasis here is not about his motion laterally. It's about vertically, right? His doom is to tarry nevermore on hither shores where mortals are. He can't come to the shores. Okay, anyway, but he's a herald on an errand that should never rest, to bear his shining lamp afar. Hang on a second. Several of you are going to the Silmarillion for explanations. It's going to be 33 years before we know that. Right? Is it a slanting reference to his job of heralding dawn? Maybe. Maybe. Do we even know that? Could we construct from this poem that he is the morning star? I don't know that we could. We might guess it, right? We might. We know that he appeared right before the dawn, the first time, right? But what does that signify, right? Do we know that he did it every day thereafter? A wonder ere the waking dawn, exactly. Yeah. The first wonderful time he appeared, that is when it happened. But, yeah. And good. I'm not trying to just like kind of play dumb with that. I mean, I think that you're quite right. For thoughtless, we've got a bunch of hints in that direction. You can dismiss them individually, but they do add up. I agree. For thoughtless, the way that I would put it in that way, you could see this as a kind of riddle almost, right? Like we're supposed to put together at the end and be like, oh, it's the morning star, right? Maybe. I think that there could be a kind of riddle-like element to this poem in that way. But, yeah. No, again, we get lots of things there. Earendil is Venus? That's more than I know. Right? But again, most importantly, what does the poem emphasize? What is the poem about? And we have to be very careful not to free associate. Not to free associate, right? Don't just go with like, well, we know he's the morning star, and so what does that make us think of? Don't go Silmarillion associating. Because if you do that, you'll go yourself in different directions than the directions the poem is pushing you. He's a herald to Middle-earth. If we remember the Silmarillion stuff, we'll know that he is a herald of hope. But hang on a second. Gosh. Notice that that's also not mentioned in the poem at all. Right? It's not about hope. I mean, we know it is, right? But is there any whiff of it? When he is seen, when the star of hope arises, what are we told? We're told of his frustration, his hearing the lamentation, and him not being able to do anything about it. Exactly. It's not hope for Earendil, Tony. Yes, as Mike says, the poem is about how Earendil ends up sad and lonely. Yes, Mad Violinist says it's about his doom, not about what his doom brings for others. Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, Tarlonio remembers Gilrain's line, right? I gave hope to the Dunedain, I left none for myself. Yeah, we see her kind of mirroring Earendil there. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, Mad Violinist, I agree. It's rather as if you wrote about the crucifixion without talking about salvation. Yeah, I mean, yes, it is. This is a very, very remarkable version of the Earendil story. Because it tells us, yes, as Mike says, this is maybe not an angle on the Earendil story that the elves might take. Yeah, and Mike, let's follow that up for a second. What kind of angle is it? The angle is from hither shores where mortals are, right? This is a mortal point of view poem. Looking at Earendil and Earendil's story from the point of view of a mortal, right? Exactly. This is, Matt, as you were suggesting, this is a poem about what happens to mortals when they go to the world's end, right? When they go to Valinor. And he's an undying doom, a mighty doom is laid upon him, right? And look, it's a mighty doom, and that word also is ambiguous, right? The primary sense in this stanza would seem to be mighty in the sense of, like, the doom is powerful, right? He can't fight the doom. He can't change the doom because it's a very mighty doom that is laid on him, right? Which is going to last until the moon fades, right? But it's also mighty, perhaps. I mean, it leaves open the fact that it could be mighty in another sense, right? That is, it's a mighty doom. He accomplishes mighty things. Great, good things happen through him, because of his doom, right? But it's like those things which are normally the primary point of the Earendil story are the secondary point of the Earendil story. Trifle says that it's an interesting take that this is what happens to mortals who go to fairy, when Bilbo will end up doing just that himself. Yes, and I'd add one thing more. It's interesting that this is what happens when mortals go to fairy thing is being sung by Bilbo when he is essentially in fairy himself. He is a mortal living among elves. Right? He has been most of the time, that is, whenever Aragorn isn't visiting, the only mortal in the joint. He has moved out of mortal lands. He's left the Shire behind and gone to live among the elves in Rivendell. Right? And there he is, the only mortal in the place. Most of the time. Right? The only mortal in the place. And he tells the story of Earendil and makes it into a story of what happens when mortals cross that line and go to be among immortals. and strange things happen to him. This is a fairy story, ultimately, right? A story about a mortal who has crossed into fairy, Flammifer, as you were suggesting. Yeah, ultimately, that's what this is. And it's very beautiful, and it's very great. I mean, he's not insulting Earendil. He's not lessening Earendil. In fact, what it is a very kind of sympathetic view of Earendil, right? For Thoughtless asks, is there anything in the poem that suggests Earendil is human and not elf kind? What are we told about Earendil at the beginning? He's a mariner. Here we go. He's got the panoply of ancient kings. We got nothing. Nor about Elwing. Other than that she could fly, which is a little unusual. Yeah. Now, we know from the Silmarillion that he is of mixed heritage, right? But we don't know anything else. Crownless, I agree. Flying is more than a little unusual, but you know what's even more unusual, Crownless, is just dropping that in and not even explaining it at all. Their flying Elwing came to him, like you do, right? You know, it's all good. Yeah. Belungsmond, I agree. The only thing that his own heritage is not discussed, right? But anyway, so yeah, so his heritage is not discussed in the poem. But the time mortality is brought up about like here, right? A wind of power in Tarmanel, by paths that seldom mortal goes his boated bore, right? Which sounds like he is coming from the mortal place, right? Now, saying that he's being born by paths that seldom mortal goes doesn't prove that he's mortal, but seems to put him, I was about to say, in the same boat, but that would be just too awful. But anyway, when he gets to Elvenhome, right, when he gets to the end of the world, he's left the mortal lands behind, and he goes through the Kalikirian, and he's in the timeless halls, and he's beyond the world. The only time immortal is right. His wings are immortal. The only time that the word mortal, I think, is used in the poem is to describe the lands that he comes from, right? Because he yearned again to find afar his home, right? Yeah, on hither shores where mortals are. Yeah. Brandon, that's a really wonderful point. Brandon says it's interesting appealing to Elrond and his family's human side in this poem, considering the decision that Arwen has made, or is at least considering. Yeah, that's a wonderful point. Absolutely. Yeah. So we know he's plainly associated with the mortal lands, right? As opposed to the undying lands, right? To the immortal lands. Yeah. Yeah, Valoria's asking, do we even know much about elven immortality or mortality at this point. Explicitly? Yeah, not sure. Yeah, so Mike is reminded of that poem. He says, this makes me think of Aragorn's Luthien poem. The prose summary had all the events. The poem had the emotion. Here we get the emotion. He can't ever go home. Makes me want to cry, but we don't get the prose summary with all the action. Yeah. Yeah, we'll get some exposition in the council. Keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. This question about elvish mortality or immortality. Keep this in mind when Frodo interrupts Elrond in the council. It's going to be important. We should get to that soon. Gosh. What? Like by Christmas, probably. Yes. Yes. Yep. Yeah, I know that's cool. Okay. Yeah, the line that is drawn in the poem is very clearly between the mortal lands on the hither shores. Hither, meaning from where we're sitting, right? So our world. And then on the other side is the world's end, right? Yeah, yeah. We do have yet another poem in this chapter, Triable, I know. But it's a short one. It's a short one. And in Quenya. So it's all good. Now, Kimber, I agree that Bilbo's audience is elves and he doesn't need to summarize the plot and explain who the characters are. Agreed. But which undoubtedly is why he doesn't do it. But the point is, we need a summary, right? We still don't know anything about almost any of this. Remember that parallel. Remember that the parallel between Bilbo and Earendil, right? Talk about cheeky, right? You realize that? You realize that one way to paraphrase this poem would be, Elrond, I know just how your dad felt. Right? I mean, dang. That's pretty cheeky right there. I mean, good grief. Yeah. 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 How does Bilbo know this? How does Bilbo know? Well, I think Bilbo is just imagining how Earendil feels. Bilbo can never go home either? Well, not really. Yeah, how your dad felt when he left you behind. Exactly. Yeah. Bilbo's, there's no, I mean, any reason to there's any opportunity Bilbo has had over the last 17 years to hear the story of Earendil, but he's undoubtedly never heard it like this, right? And remember, we were talking before about delight in mortal poetry, right? And how the songs of Bilbo might be appreciated by the elves, not on like necessarily aesthetic ground, but on something more like anthropological grounds, right? Because mortal music is just different from them, and it, prompts them to see the world in a completely different way. And I think that here we see that, right? That Bilbo is being rather aggressive in that. Right? I do think that at the end of the day, this is a very mortal poem, right? Which is very, whose primary and fundamental concern is what happens to mortals when they come in contact with that which is much higher and greater than they are. And think of the context that this puts if we go back to the beginning, right? No, I'm not starting the poem all over again. But just for a second here, if let me log back in there. If you think back to the beginning, right? How beautiful his ship is, right? The opening is like the marvels of his ship, which are great, right? But think of the magical marvels to come, right? The flying ship and the Silmaril and the immortal wings, right? That are going to be given to it. Think about him. Oh, in panoply of ancient kings in chained rings, he armored him, right? Oh, he was awesome, right? I mean, look at Earendil was among mortals, right? Before he left, he was like head and shoulders, right? He's the greatest of the great. I mean, look at that description. I mean, he's got a dragon horn bow for crying out loud, right? In a chalcedony scabbard for crying out loud. I mean, good. Wow. And then he struggles, and then he gets the Silmaril, and then he's in immortal lands where there's gold and jewels and pearls on the beach, right? The contrast, right, between the mighty hero, which is that opening. I mean, how mighty hero does that sound at the beginning with his wonderful ship and his amazing armor and everything else, right? And off he goes, though we don't know quite why. And then he is just the one having all these things done to him, right? Now he gets the really wonderful ship, and he is transformed, and an undying doom is laid upon him, and now he can never come back home, right? His time in Elfland, right? His time in the West, when he crosses the border, he is elevated. He is enriched. New melodies are taught to him, right? He is told marvels. He's shown visions that are forbid to those who dwell within the world, right? And then he is given the ability to fly, to come behind the sun and light of moon, and he can't go home, right? Bilbo also has been elevated. But, Elrond thinks him quite singular among hobbits, right? He's even got the armor and the sword hanging above his mantelpiece at home, right? Before he left, I mean. And then he goes off on his journey and he crosses the border, this time for good, right? Not just to visit, but to stay. And he is enriched. He also is taught melodies and learns wonders, right, from sages old. But what happens to mortals like that? Is he going to end up like Earendil? And of course, it has relevance for Frodo as well, obviously. And remember also that Frodo came straight into this from his elvish music enchantment experience. Yeah. Okay. All right. Next week, we will see. We finished the poem. Told you we'd finish the poem. We'll go on and we'll read the other two versions of the poem. Now, I am not going to go anything like this carefully, stanza by stanza through those. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the Earendil poem, and we're going to look at what Christopher calls the Rivendell version of the poem. I'm going to read both of those next week. And what I want to do when we read those poems, and we're not going to do super close reading of those two. What I want to mostly focus on when we read those poems is the stories, right? What are those poems about? In the same way that we at the end here are kind of coming to what this story was about, not what Earendil did, but what happened to him, and therefore potentially what happens to any of them. The easiest place, if you want to look them up for yourself to read them in advance, Ambrosius, the easiest place to find the two versions of the poem we're going to be talking about are going to be in the Treason of Isengard, is where both of them are found. But you can read the version of Earendil that's in the Adventures of Tom Bombadil. That'll also do. That one's revised. He revised it in the 60s, so it's not exactly the first one that he did at the beginning. But those two poems, the early version of Earendil and then the revision, are both in Treason of Isengard. But I'll put the full text of both of them up so we can read them together next time too. So, all right. So that's what's going to happen next time. So we'll talk about both of those next time. And then, so that's going to be next week, which is, what is today? What's the date? It's the 15th. So next week is the 22nd. That's what we're going to do on the 22nd. And then I'll be gone the week after that. We won't have any class on the 29th. But then after that is the 5th of November. And the 5th of November is a special day because the 5th of November is Mad Violinist's birthday. So it's a very special day. It's also the Dora Word's birthday too, I think. But it is also the day on which we are going to have two very special guests. Alan and Sean from the Prancing Pony podcast are going to join us on the 5th as we return to prose at the end of the poetry. So next week we're going to talk about those other two poems, and then we're going to return and get to Bilbo and Frodo discussing with Lindir the results of the reaction. We'll see the reaction to the poem. So there we go. That's what's going to happen on the 5th of November. So that'll be a big day. Hope you can join us for that. They're going to stick around for the field trip too. So next week we finish the poetry. The 5th of November, the Prancing Pony guys are coming for our crossover to celebrate them passing us like we're standing still in their read through of the Lord of the Rings. All right. Very good. So I'm going to switch over. I'm going to switch over to just on Twitter. So I'm going to turn off the Twitter feed. Thanks everybody who were able to join me on Twitter tonight, and feel free to come join us on twitch.tv/SignumU. All right. Good. Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So yeah, it's like, having gone in depth with this poem, I think I prefer Bilbo's Man in the Moon to his Man in the Star poem.
Yeah, well, it's certainly more cheerful, isn't it?
Well, there's more things happening.
Yeah.
It's like, it makes me wonder, is Bilbo trying to ape elven style by this very passive tone of voice or something?
I don't know. I mean, I think... Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I want to compare it to other elven poems and other Bilbo poems. See?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good... it's a good question. I mean, it's a good idea. But I'm not sure. Again, I think I feel like in a sense, his de-emphasis of the action, right, that is like of what Earendil does, is, I mean, it's almost like an aggressively elfification of the poem in the sense that it de-emphasizes the bits that the elves obviously, I think, would mostly think are the most important ones.
Yeah, it's very much on like a mortal's terror of immortality.
Yeah, is
the thing.
Yeah,
it suddenly made me think of the Irish tale of Oisin and Tir na Nog.
Yeah, no,
Fairyland.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that kind of, it does very much begin to sound like a what happens when a mortal strays into Elfland, and it's very often not good. Or at least
Then
not
we
wholly
get into
desirable.
Dunsany and Lovecraft and all their terrors of dreamlands and wonderlands kind of thing.
Right. It's not quite the same kind of terror, not the same flavor, but yeah, that
I mean the dreamland poems, not the eldritch poems.
right, yes. But Balangsmond, exactly. There's a big emphasis on the doom. Yes, exactly. It's about what happens to Earendil, not.
I'm gonna sing the doom song now.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, I have to admit that as time goes on, I'm getting increasingly tempted just to jump forward and look at Thorn's Gate, just so that we can start riding from Thorn's Gate instead of continuously riding up from Caelondim.
I mean, I can't blame you.
But
so
you know
if you want
what?
to do that,
like, that's not thorough. And that would circumvent the whole like archaeological drama that we've been looking at coming from this direction.
It's a different kind of thorough.
It's a different kind of thorough, yeah.
All right, Sarnor it is. But everyone be on your guard for this one.
Yeah, are we okay for Sarnor? What do we have for levels here?
Let's see.
Oh, we've got a level 18. That's dangerous. All right. Well, Dime's here, and she's 120, so that's helpful. And a 62.
I'm definitely gonna have to put up a fight.
And I'm 95. I can turn on. I can turn my links on aggressive, and that'll help too.
Yeah.
Why are Eladon and Elro here, standing here?
Oh, they're here to talk to the High Elves who have been considering going back over to the Grey Havens. They've escorted the High Elf here. That's when you play a High Elf, they've escorted you here. Travel from here to the Grey Havens.
When you play a High Elf?
Yes.
At what point in the High Elf playing do you get an escort?
At the end of the intro, when you leave the Halls of Healing.
Oh, I forgot that bit.
Yeah, you didn't finish that bit last bit.
Oh, I didn't finish that bit?
Yeah, you have to do, there's one last task when you appear at the harbor. You have to talk. You have to decide whether you're going over the ocean.
Okay.
Or whether you're staying here in Middle Earth, and guess which one you're probably going to end up picking.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so have they always been here?
Only when the High Elf starter mission became
right. But I mean, the whole time we've been exploring, they've been here, and I just haven't noticed them until now.
Yes.
How deeply unobservant of me. Wow. Okay.
It's them.
Yeah, there they are. Okay, I'll just, I guess, pretend I always saw them. Okay, so we'll see how we do in Sarnor. This is going to be our first, place that we've gone where people are in danger for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. Well, imagine how, those two feel. They're like, oh man, the professor rides past us every week and he doesn't say hi.
I know. Right now I'm feeling really bad. Especially after, all this contemplation of how lonely and sad their, grandpa is. We've just been doing. Wow. Yeah, Tormarth and I agree. It would be funny if you could decide to leave Middle Earth. And I have to admit, because my high elf character I made is like my 9th character or something, and I would be tempted just to be like, yes, I do choose to go to the Grey Havens. Please take me to the Grey Havens. That's just where I want to go. End
game. Roll credits.
Let me see the Grey Havens and then roll credits. That'll be fine.
Maybe they'll get there.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll actually get to see Tuna and all that,
Yeah, well, you got to think, though, if they, you'd have to wonder if they make the Grey Havens, what message they're trying to send,
Yeah. Everything has its time and everything ends.
Yeah.
It'd be a fitting way for the game to end if it did have to end at any point.
Sure would.
But let us now speak of happier things.
Let us now speak of happier things, indeed. Okay. Speaking of happier things, dwarf ruins, those are happier things.
Yes.
The dwarvish archaeogaming we've been doing is a happier thing. And okay, so in Sarnur, we were seeing some clear and fun evidence that it was a dower handy construction. It was an old dower handy building and a very elaborate one. And I was even thinking, that I was even thinking that there's evidence that all of the major dower handy constructions were set back against the wall, as if they were like windows and extensions that came from underground, like within the cliff buildings.
Which we have seen before.
Right, exactly. And
which way are you going?
I'm going up around the north of...
Okay. Oh, Gondaman.
Gondaman, yeah. I'm passing Gondaman now. Passing Gondaman on my left.
I always go the other way around, so that's why I go.
Oh, I see. Well, yes, one
No
could
wonder
do that
I got
too.
last time.
One could do that too.
Even with mile markers, it's possible to get lost.
Okay, well, so I was saying evidence of that this was a major dower handy construction, but here's the thing. We were looking at the opening of the cave, and the opening of the cave does not show evidence that it is long-beardish. So what I'm expecting to find in Sarnur is pure dower handy architecture with no evidence of long-beardish intervention. That's what I'm expecting to find because of the opening of the cave.
Okay.
Because
which was pretty distinct, yeah.
Yes, we have seen this pattern. We have seen the pattern that when the Longbeards come, they like overlay the major things, especially the arches, right? They do this with arches all the time. We've not seen a single dower handy arch remaining ever since we have been exploring these ruins. I don't remember even one of them. And until the opening to Sarnur, which looks to have collapsed. So my theory was that the opening to the underground portion of Sarnur caved in.
Yeah.
And the Longbeards came. When the Longbeards came, they rebuilt this bit of it, the external bit, to use this as a like stronghold, because it's it's like several different terraces and stuff. So all of this is Longbeardish until we get all the way up in
to the mouth of the beast here.
Yes.
I'm going to have to dismount. They're going to start firing.
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry about that. To here.
Yeah.
And this
does kind of explain why they have to cover up everything, you know?
Yes. This is a dower handy arch because those spikes look just like the spikes on the spiky walls that we just passed coming up, which we concluded were dower handy. And this arch, which is quite unattractive, really, and rather unimpressive, I was taking
That's
to be
all.
the ruins of a dour handy arch with the rock behind it, so that basically the idea is that this irregular cave opening that we have to go through
Black
to get
crack.
in there, yes, the black crack, has like recently been opened, right? Presumably, I say presumably because, like, I mean, I am presuming, I should specify, that I am presuming that. Oops, hang on. Where do we go? Here we are. Okay. That we that like the dour hands who are here, right? Like we just passed some dour hands who probably shot at some of you. Did it, right? Have opened it up. Okay. And so now to see if my see if my theory
Hypothesis.
is true. There we go. Okay, we ready? Ready to go
Yep.
in? Everybody, so ready to protect the younglings here?
Arms at the ready. So
Okay.
are we thinking this is like the source of the Dourhan invasion then?
Maybe. Okay, let's see. All right. Yep, I think this is Dour Handy. Looking promising.
Okay. Yo, there's Skorgrim there.
Where's Skorgrim?
Big statue of him right here in this little
Oh,
hall
yeah.
with the beer casks.
Oh, look at that. See, this almost certainly proves my point. Because if the Longbeards had come in here and done anything, one of the first things they'd have done is taken this down.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, I love the crystal lamps.
Oh, yeah, up above. Sure.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
They don't look, they look like they just sort of found the luminous crystal and just let it.
Yeah.
They covered it and left the rest naked. They didn't do much to it.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Oh
It's
man,
doing
yep.
its
See, you
job,
can
why
tell
mess
by
with
the age of the walls here, like by this sort of lichen and stuff that's built up on it. And this is way older than the Longbeard period.
I'm suddenly thinking of Cask of Amontillado. They were talking about how there's saltpeter all over the walls.
Right. Oh man.
Either that or it's guano. You look at how many bats are in here.
Well, that's true. Are there lots of bats?
Yeah, look
I don't
up.
see the bats. Oh yeah, there they are flying around. Or are those leaves?
There's some ashes. There's ashes, but there were also flocks of bats that just occasionally swooped down and went.
Okay. There's ashes too?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I am I love it when a theory gets confirmed. I mean, it's kind of fun when a theory is counter-confirmed too, and then you have to come up with a new theory. That's also fun. But this is, I won't deny, even more gratifying. Oh, hang on, let me summon my links here just in case it will be useful. And I'm pretty sure I have it set on automatically attack everything. Don't I? No, I don't. Hang on.
Yeah, aggressive mode. Yeah.
Aggressive mode, yeah. Okay, yeah. All right. Yeah, there he goes. Okay, good. All right, so here are the bridges. Bridges like this are presumably the ones that were taken out by the Longbeards, and they're not real interesting.
Notice
See, the
we
long...
don't have any of those blue stones in there that we get in Longbeard architecture. The ones that look kind of like blue quartz.
Yeah. I can see why, even just apart from, the shifts of political ideology, why the Longbeards would want to kind of make over some of the stuff, because it's, it looks kind of shabby.
Apart. Looks pretty fallen apart over there. I would not trust my way to that bridge up there.
Yeah, some of those bridges up there are looking questionable. Man, this place is huge, though. Huge, though, it's a little hard to say, like, what the point of it is. Like, I don't see any entries or windows.
All we saw was one feasting hall, which looked fairly newly put there.
Right, and then there's like, what are these things? Like these freestanding structures.
Yeah.
And I want to be careful not to fall into any chasms.
Yeah, look at this. It just goes into natural caves. There's no real direction or anything.
Yeah.
Do you see this doorway back here? Right.
Wait, which doorway?
This doorway back here. I'm popping up in front of it. This guy.
Oh, like where that dour hand guy is currently walking?
Yeah. It's just natural caves. It's a huge archway and then just natural caves.
Huge archway and then down into natural caves. Hey, can we go down here?
Yeah.
Explore the natural caves. Does this get to any... see, this is why I don't steer with the mouse. Okay. Oh, yep. Now we come out on this other terrace here with a cliff. Oh, there's a... Oh. Trying to look down. Is that... Oh, that's a troll. I thought it was a statue.
Yeah. Nope, lots of trolls. Fuck. Man, really?
Alright.
Hate sappers.
Going down to the trolls. The
Here's
fires.
my shield maiden. What am I paying you for?
Artificial. Wow. Who threw the troll on top of the torch? The brazier there. That was fairly impressive. Hey there, trolls. Ooh, Betrayer's Bane, huh?
Yeah, I guess.
It's the betrayer, I assume, is Skorgrim?
That implies that these guys are gonna hurt Skorgrim, but aren't these guys on Skorgrim's side?
Yeah. But, no, I thought maybe we were the Bane of the Betrayer, perhaps.
Huh.
And then we resort again to...
Still no functional
normal
edifices anywhere. Everything is just a way to get to another thing.
Yeah.
It's all just passages.
Yeah, it is. We got trolls eating a bear? Oh, okay. Oh, man. I think that's like one of the first times Narnian's ever taken damage in his history.
Yeah, these guys don't mess around.
Got stunned there for a second. Like, they must have imported the bears.
Be excellent to each other, guys.
Whoa, and... Oh, that bear's alive? I mean, briefly.
Oh, yep.
But, I thought that bear was a corpse bear being eaten by the... Oh, and now Yetis?
Yep. So...
Is this ice?
Looks like the Longbeards kind of let things get out of hand out here.
Well, okay, but I don't see any evidence the Longbeards were ever here. I think the Longbeards didn't know about this place. It still is unclear...
Who's running the joint?
Yeah, well, it's also unclear what I'm standing on. Ice?
I think it's ice.
This is a frozen river?
Yep, frozen river.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and guess that all of the dwarves, I mean, like the ancient dour hands who built the place, live in, like, the walls. I still don't see much in the way of doors. Maybe they're all secret doors.
Well, they do have secret doors.
Maybe they're super secretive, and...
Like these are all like doorways to like apartment blocks or something?
Yes. So that like nobody lives, so that, yeah, because you said it was all, it's like, you know, every place is just like a way to get to another place, right?
Uh-huh.
So, yeah. Maybe like all of these outer passages really just are that. Like nobody actually lived or did anything out here. This, from the dwarvish point of view, is like the open countryside, right?
Uh-huh.
This is like a terrace with a view.
It's a pretty nice view here.
It is, you know, frozen river, yetis and polar bears running around, which is scenic in its own way. Yeah, so if we imagine that the secretive...
Like these little alcoves over here.
Right.
Conceivably.
Yeah, like there could be doors somewhere. Dwarf doors are hard to find, Amathorn, and they're not made to be seen when shut, right? There could totally be a door here in this wall, for instance. And we just don't know where it is. There could be a door down here. Because who are we to think that we should know where to find a door? Because we're not dour hands. We don't have the secret of these dwarves.
I don't presume anything of dwarves.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So that seems to be then one conclusion that we could draw. Oh, is this another cave opening over here?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't want to leave behind the people who actually have to fight things. Oh, what happened to my... Did something actually kill my lynx? That's unexpected.
It can happen.
Okay. All right, where do we go through here? Oh, this is a door.
Door.
We gonna be in trouble?
What do we want to do? I don't know. You can always retreat.
Okay, let's take a look. What's behind the actual door? Okay, Sarnur Caverns. Okay, so now we've just got wooden bridges, just in case you thought the others were a little too written. Or like insufficiently rickety. Whoa. More
Trolls
all the way
with
down
armor.
to...
And goblins.
Ice worms down there and giant trolls who can probably knock us off the cliffs, right?
Yeah, if I recall, there's like lots of different passageways to lots of different chambers of these caves, and none of them are Dowerhound, only the surfaces.
Okay. Well, I don't necessarily need to plumb the depths of these caverns unless there's definitely something really interesting down there that we know about.
But notice there's no dwarf activity.
Yeah, there really isn't any evidence of any activity.
We've seen more goblins than we have dwarves so far, and that's definitely telling.
Yes. Now, there were some dwarves living upstairs, but down here we're just getting trolls. We're getting ice, looks like ice worms down there on the ground.
Big horned Wookiees.
Yeah.
I guess they wouldn't be Wookiees if they live in the snow. They'd be that other guy.
Oh, right. The thing on Hoth? Yeah.
Yeah, the snow beast on Hoth.
Yeah.
What you call it? Oh, I used to know what that was, and I can't remember.
Yeah, I should know.
What was that?
Wampus.
No. Wampum? Wampum. Yeah, it was. Wampa. Right.
Wampas, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, so there's a big named drake down there. That's fine, but
I think that's it. These chambers all go to named enemies. We just Avenger of Sarner. There's 6 chambers, each with its own named enemy.
Okay, right. But we're not going to see any architecture. So
No, so we might as well go back.
right. So what is the conclusion to be drawn from this? The conclusion to be drawn from this is that the Dour Hands lived, but they only lived in the topmost sections of this. There's no evidence now that we've let all these guys reset.
I know.
There's not any evidence that, hey, look, Darnie just attacked somebody for like the first time ever. That was exciting. Anyway, yeah. So there's no evidence that they went any further than this. So this is this massive, massive cave system that the Dour Hands occupied just the topmost bit of.
Mm-hmm. But they did occupy down here. They're just not here.
Right. No, I mean here, but not down further is what I mean.
Yeah.
But even this itself, which we had to come down to, is still like, we see that there's like much evidence of them going way, way beyond. The caves, I mean, not the dwarves. Okay. There we go. So let's go back up and continue back to the upper reaches. What are those guys doing? Are they fighting? Are they beating the trolls?
Trying to see. It looks like they're trying to control them. Notice they're yelling at the troll, and the troll is actually cowering from them. So it looks like they're trying to keep the troll at bay. Remember, there were some other Dour Hand instances where they had gotten a troll and were trying to sick them on us.
Okay. So this is them trying to regain their old mastery of the caves, as if the trolls who live here within these caves had once been their servants, but are not anymore.
Or they're just making best use of an infestation.
Right. Okay. Okay, right. So we do see the Dour Hands having returned up here to their ancient home. Okay. Now heading back up, we've got some cave claws. Okay.
Okay. So we're back at the
Right.
useless
Is everybody all right?
place full
Everybody
of-
make it up?
I think so.
What is that? Is that dog a cosmetic pet?
Uh,
I think it must be. I like the dog. Anyway, okay, sorry. So yes, if we apply the hidden door theory up here, then again, one would think that, we would be, there would be lots of entrances into all of the buildings which are up here on the walls, along the walls. I just wanted to look down over the edge of the cliff. Okay, and way down at the bottom we see another frozen river with
Yep.
more yetis. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm trying to figure, based on what we see here, what place this would have had within the Dour Handy culture. A little hard to, draw a firm conclusion until we've seen more. When we've only really just, begun to look at the dwarvish. Ooh! A set of doors.
Hey.
There's nothing secret about these things.
No, this is definitely a door. It says Sarner's Keep.
And the image on those doors, the mountains, have we seen these doors?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Where have we seen these?
Thorns Hall.
In Thorns Hall?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
Matter of fact, I want you to remember a lot of stuff here because we will be seeing some of it in Thorns Hall as well.
Okay, well, it's getting late, but can we go into the keep?
We can take a gander.
Okay. In the keep. Scorgrims all over the place.
He's dabbing.
Yeah.
The dab is dead. Just ask my middle schoolers.
Oh, yeah, they're really strict about that.
Oh, yeah. No dabbing, Mom.
Yeah. I got in some serious trouble for that.
Yeah, this,
Okay, so
okay.
lots of Skorgrims flanking the path to a bigger Skorgrim.
Yeah.
Is this the place where we oversee him doing the ritual?
Yeah, similar, I think. Yeah, I think this is similar to where you and, the three dwarves and eventually Aladdin and Elrohir witnessed the resurrection of Skorgrim. Also, I think it's similar. I think there's a similar building near Thorin's Hall that has similar architecture, I believe.
Right.
It's not exactly the same, but there's a lot of elements that are the same.
Right, that takes place in Skorgrim's tomb, but this reminds me of it very... Wait, was that a warg? That was a warg. Wargs, there's like random wargs lying in there.
When suddenly a warg? What?
Yeah, just these... I didn't even notice that those were wargs lying next to the statue up there.
It says cave warg.
I didn't know that a cave warg was even a thing.
Me neither. But there we go. Well, there's goblins here, so...
Okay.
They brought their mounts.
They're cave mounts. And I noticed that the dwarf, the dour hand that we met, was a mine overseer.
Yeah, and this one's a gem seeker. Which is bit the dust.
So they're miners?
Well, now I feel bad about killing them.
Exactly. I think we should have consulted their parents. Not
that kind of miner.
Oh, not that kind of miner. Right. Sorry. Misunderstood. Oh, and here's another passage. It just goes straight into natural cave again. Yeah.
Yep. Bet there's more beasties in here.
Yeah, we got the wargs. And we got
some dour hands. That's new.
Dwarves. Passage through. Where are we going? We were in a keep.
We're trying to keep up.
And now we get, goblins and whatnot? Yeah, sorry. I know I'm getting ahead.
Boy, dour hand are reaching for some low fruit here to help them regain the glory of the dour hands. Pretty much aligning themselves with every single race they think is inferior.
Right. Wow, I was just killed. That was cool. That's never happened to me before.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. It's like Narnian's first death ever.
Oh.
So look at that. I'm getting the self-reviving tooltip because it's never happened before.
Oh.
Woohoo!
But just still seeing a lot of buildings of no real purpose. It's so weird. Or no purpose that we can divine at very least.
Yeah, wow, and my out-of-combat healing is so slow.
Oh, man.
Because I have, no stats and, no traits.
You dumped it all in red. Oh, right, you haven't... Okay.
Yeah. Narnian is not exactly designed for combat, let's just say that.
He's a bookish sort of warrior.
He is. He's lived a sheltered life and...
You injure with your tongue.
Yes, he received his 95 levels, by sufferance rather than by earning them.
Oh, wouldn't it be cool if I could get a certificate from Signum from combat? Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So, we're mining. He was mining at the crystal.
Oh, maybe they need torches. Portable torches,
Maybe they do. Okay, so we're getting these random little evidences, though. Like this pillar here.
Just keel over already. Ugh. Yeah, It does look like it's being eaten up again by the cave.
Yes.
Which implies
Yeah.
there's a lot of water flow and mineral deposits. It also implies that this has been laying like this for thousands of years.
Yeah, really long time. Almost fell off the cliff there. Ooh, like a trestle bridge up there. Oh, covered bridge. That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Katrona says it looks like ice that they're chipping away.
Yeah, it could be ice or permafrost.
Yes, this could be ice. That would explain why the stone is sticking out, because this has been engulfed in ice. This part has been engulfed in ice.
It's probably a mix of mineral deposits and ice.
Right. Right.
Which you would need pickaxes for.
Yes. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I got more of these little... What are these little houses? They're like tomb-shaped. They're like similar to the things we saw in Angmar.
Well, I'm
There's
wondering.
no clear purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering if they could be tombs. I mean, they look like tombs, which doesn't necessarily say much, because they look like tombs just because they're freestanding stone structures with no obvious doors and windows, right? That's kind of what makes us think it looks like a tomb. And so just because it looks like that doesn't necessarily mean that it is. That is to say, dwarves who lived there might not have wanted windows. And the doors are secret doors. So,
yeah, fair enough. And we are going to see buildings that look like this in Thorn's Hall once again, and we'll have to make note of what they were used for.
Right. Ooh, an ancient silver deposit. Those are useful.
Yeah.
Oh, here's that bridge.
Yeah.
Wooden supports, though. Would you look at that?
Yes. So the bridge itself looks like the bridge we saw outside of Sarnor and outside and leading out into and out of the Shire.
Yes, exactly like that. So a classic Dower Handy bridge, but then with these wooden beams holding a wooden roof. Yeah.
It implies it was necessary for something. Maybe there was like a dangerous rockfall from above.
Right.
Or high winds.
Yeah. Well, unlikely to be high winds, I suppose, in here, but...
Well, you get some pretty strong winds in caves.
Sometimes. Okay, so up here, because we did come up to get up here, we've got all this ice and them apparently trying to recover this place. Oh, yeah. Dead end. I mean, probably not if we knew the way to open the Dower Hand doors, but...
Yeah.
Which I'm assuming are there. Interesting. Yeah, Amathorn, you are right. This place is massive.
Yeah, this is kind of Goblin Town meets Moria.
Yeah. I mean, it's really large.
People might have to use their milestones to get out of here.
Oh, yeah, totally using milestones to get out of here. There's no way I'm going to keep going until I find the exit.
And come to that, I don't know if we're going to see anything much more.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that too. I think we've found all that there is to find.
I definitely think we should look at Thorn's Gate and all of the Dower Hand structures nearby, and then come back and give this a look and see if we have any more light to shed on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Hang on a second. We came this way, right? Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I think this place warrants a second look. We have more context. Oh, just dead end.
More dead ends.
Okay.
Yeah, dead ends with
hooray.
lots of wargs.
literal dead end. And, well, lots of fire. Lots of fire. Oh, it's like the good old days.
Okay. Yeah, so there are forges in the deep down, Pontine says. Yeah, maybe we come back and look at the forges. One of the things I will be looking for will be to see what other evidence is, because this place is huge, right?
Uh-huh.
Therefore, are we to assume that this was the central hold, right? That this was the great, that like this is to the Dour Hands what Moria was to the Longbeards, right? I mean, is that the kind of thing?
Great Dour Hand nation, yeah.
Yeah, is this the ancient center of the Dour Hand nation, or not? And what can we learn about the Dour Hand nation from this? I mean, there are some conclusions I'm ready to come to. That they were secretive, that they preferred the dark, presumably for their dark business, given that there's like no windows and stuff in here. Even though we saw that the external Dour Hand architecture was chiefly marked by the stained glass windows, right? So it looked like ornate windows were a big part of the thing. But inside here, we're not seeing anything like that. No windows of any kind, stained glass or otherwise.
Yeah, I see where that bridge has a roof, by the way. There's a hole.
No.
In the cave above it.
Oh, that's like the sky up there.
Yeah. That might be where all the ash is coming from, too.
Yeah.
Or the ash might be coming from the forges. It's part of the prophecy, though, the ash on the snow, remember?
Oh, the ash on the snow. My goodness, that does take me back. Yes. Vague memories of that. Okay, and they're still mining in here. We've got the gem seekers and the mine overseers and stuff in here. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we should probably go rather than spending another half hour looking for the way out.
Yeah.
I think we can just milestone from here. So I am excited that my suppositions about the Dour Hand, about the internal architecture of Sarnor were richly confirmed, and I'd never been in here before, so that was a completely, I was going to say a blind guess, but of course it wasn't a guess, it was a deduction. And it's pretty nice to see that we're not just completely making stuff up when we're doing our archaeogaming, so that's excellent. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. We will be back, as I said, next week on the 22nd of October when we will do the background of the errantry poems, and then we will come back and continue moving towards Thorin's Gate and continuing to try to understand the history of the dwarves here in the Blue Mountains as evidenced by their architecture. Thanks, everybody, and good night.
Good night.
Thanks for joining me on this epic exploration of The Lord of the Rings and of Standing Stone's video adaptation of Tolkien's story. If you are having even half the fun I'm having on this journey, I hope you will consider supporting the project by donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.